Welcome to the CrossCounsel podcast. We believe negative emotions shouldn't run your life. We invite you to take a deep dive into this challenging transformational journey that goes far beyond this podcast. Join Executive Director and expert facilitator Steve Freitag and me, Jon Crevillian, as we discuss how to deeply experience the love and truth of Jesus. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the CrossCounsel podcast. I, of course, am your host, Jon Crevillian, and I'm joined with my co-host, Steve Freitag. How are you, Steve?
Hey, Jon, I'm doing well. I'm almost giddy, and I hope nobody rains on my parade, but if they need to, I think I finally have my background set correctly.
Yeah, it's looking good.
So if you're familiar with the CrossCounsel office, the pictures behind me, I've actually got them in full view. If you're not watching this, then it doesn't make any sense. But the first picture we have is this looks like a young woman. You can only see her from a long distance away, and she's looking up at this cliff face, kind of like, how do I get up there? And so that's supposed to represent the challenge. You know, that's why people come, is because they have a felt need. And then the middle picture that we have here that Jenny did a great job of with our daughter Bryn setting this. And it's just these steps. I don't know how you would describe them, because it's these planks maybe, or what would you say? But somebody going up these stairs that, it looks like outdoor steps.
Yeah.
Just the horizontal part. And then there's a guy that kind of looks like you in a boat. And that's the challenge. That's taking the steps you need to take to. And then the final one, seriously, it's like when we saw that picture, it's like, oh my gosh, that looks like the back of Jon in this boat. And it's totally serene. It's peaceful. So
me trying to figure out how to fix a problem, on the website, just sitting on my boat, I don't even know.
Well, no, that should be you after you figured it out.
Sure.
The first picture there where you're looking up at the cliff and how do I get up this thing?
And
then you're like, cool, did it. Yeah, nailed that.
True. Really, this is an allegory for my work here at CrossCounsel.
That's right. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about C.S. Lewis. So, hey, allegory is right in line.
Ooh, I'm excited. I also have 3 pictures on the back of my wall, but it's just because that wall is barren. There is no greater. The Jenny is kind and gave me money to get 3 pictures off Amazon. Oh. That's all that is.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
My pictures are better than your pictures.
They are significantly better. Mine are in the woods because sometimes I'm very lost, in thought. But anyway.
We recently sat down with a group of people who are fairly new to CrossCounsel. There was a common theme. While they found some results with traditional approaches, when they fully engaged in the melt process, there was simply no comparison. What God did in their hearts through the ministry of CrossCounsel is some of the most profound healing they've ever experienced. Help us share this healing with others. Become a monthly donor. We want to reach as many people with this message of hope as we possibly can. When you support CrossCounsel, you not only share the load of the ministry costs and the sessions, but you also help us provide content and that message of hope through the various platforms. We're so grateful to be doing this with you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, we want these podcasts to be a real help and encouragement. Some people have never heard of CrossCounsel, and then somebody passes along a podcast or information on our website. And we just want to encourage our listeners that are encouraged or have come and stepped into the process, that it really is a good way to introduce people. Maybe not just a random podcast. I think even going back to episode number 1, we've probably done are we close to 150, something like that? I don't know. Yeah. We want to be a real asset to people. We want to be an encouragement, inspiration. And so that's part of the reason we do these podcasts, is to, consider what it means to spur one another on to love and good deeds. And by continuing to have that mindset of the Lord wants to continually clean up our minds. And even in biblical terms, it's like, this is about killing those fleshly things inside of us, which are mostly these deep sinful desires that come from these lies that we believe that need to be fed by some solution. And the more that we allow the Lord to chip away those places in our heart, the more refined our faith is, the more we can live the way that God's intended us to as his creation. So that's why we do the podcast. And part of that is we talk about being strong, steady, sturdy, secure. And I think that's a really good aim, because I want to exhibit that strength, not just this hardness, but a stability. And there's so much to be said for our insecurities and how deeply that impacts us. And those are the buttons that the world pushes, the enemy pushes. And we really want to set a different tone. I think it's been said, boy, I don't even know who said this, but we want to be thermostats rather than thermometers. We want to be the ones that people look at and go, oh, that's the tone. That's the mark of Jesus. That's something that's God's love working itself out in that person. And I want to be more like that, which hopefully then they point where they focus their aim toward what Jesus wants to do in their life, what the Holy Spirit wants to work out in their salvation. So not a bad aim, I don't think.
No, not at all.
So as C.S. Lewis says in the book, The Problem of Pain, he says, we actually can ignore pleasure because it's just like, we love that. We don't even give much attention to it at times because we love to swim in that. But he says, but pain insists on being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It's his megaphone to rouse a deaf world.
So true.
So we want to be tuned into his megaphone. Doesn't that sound like fun? Be tuned into the pain, tuned into his megaphone that causes us to pay attention to those things. Especially in our culture today, we can run to so many different pain managing behaviors. So,
yeah. I really like the words of like a friend of mine who actually said this at my small group a couple of weeks ago, but he said, the mistake we make when we do like sin and fall short of God is that we run away from him, like Adam did, when in reality, that's when he wants us to draw closest to him. And I think that goes hand in hand with your with the C.S. Lewis analogy of the pain and having to pay attention to that, and that being how God speaks the loudest.
Right. And I think sometimes we don't run away, but we just back away. And like maybe God won't notice if we just, we still kind of look at him and we just sort of walk backwards away. Hey, yeah, that's fine. Sometimes we do run, but I think it's even more dangerous when we just try to slide away, hoping that God doesn't notice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think we get away with that.
No.
So
I think he's on to us.
That's funny. That's one of my favorite things somebody said. I think I've mentioned that before when they said, oh, I'm on to myself. I notice now more. So that's part of the process as well. So I get this question all the time. People wonder, and I'll combine two questions into one. People say, what do I do in between sessions? Or when they're here, they're like, well, life's been kind of crazy. I haven't really thought about this. I know that it's good to be consistent in my making appointments, having sessions, that kind of thing, which it is. So they're like, well, what do I do? What do I do in between sessions? Or since I don't have anything right now, I think.
Yeah, right.
What do I do? So I think there's three things that are really helpful. I think I'll focus most on the third thing, but to try to combine those two ideas in one. So I would say to somebody who's asking, where do I go right now today? I'll ask, well, what's triggered you since your last session? And it doesn't even have to be this, oh, I got really upset or I felt really anxious or, I yelled at somebody. It's what was less than peaceful. What happened in your world, in your heart then, where that caught like an arrow. I talk about an arrow quite a bit, where like an arrow kind of got through a little deeper than it should have.
Mm.
And so it can just stop right there. People might say, oh, now that I think about it, I guess just even this morning when I looked at my schedule and said, I've got way too many things to do today. Okay, well, how does that feel? It seems like such a mundane thing, but that can actually open up a whole can of things in people's busyness. And they realize even in their busyness, they're doing these things, whether for themselves or other people, that they just want to avoid a sense of loneliness or failure just by continuing to run on that gerbil wheel. So just as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. If somebody is like, I just really can't think back, I don't really know. The next thing that we can go after is, okay, well, if it's a second or third or fourth or fifth or 84th session, we can say, okay, well, in some of the memories that you've addressed, and when I say address, I don't just mean, oh, you thought of that memory came to mind, but in the memories where you were able to identify lies and you were able to, from a heart level, hold that out to the Lord and say, Lord, what do I need here? What's the truth you have for me? And in those places where they've reported truth and peace, okay, as you go back into that memory, is there still that profound sense of peace or truth? And there's times where people say, wow, I can't believe that thing that haunted me for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I still can't find any pain there. Other times there's just different layers or levels in those memories, and they're surprised to see, oh, there's something else in the corner here that I didn't notice before. So there's a lot of benefit from doing that. And there are people that stepped into a memory and they weren't able to get to a place where they were ready to receive truth, or they thought they were, and that it just didn't seem like much was happening, and they were left stuck in those memories. That happens quite a bit as well. So that could be point number 2. But there's a third one that I think that we haven't really talked a whole lot about. So I think it's really important for us to think about anything that's coming up in our lives, those things that we're trying to run from, not just from God, but from situations. But a date is coming, a moment is coming, a situation is going to happen, whether they like it or not. I don't know anybody who's got the ability to stop time.
True.
True. So yeah, is there anything coming up in your life that you don't feel perfectly peaceful about? And I think that opens things up. So that's where I want to spend a lot of my time. And hey, John, I'm going to just kind of run through these. But if you're like, whoa, hey, more explanation on that, or wow, that really pushes a button here. Not that we'll do a session for you right now, unless
it'll be good to write down for future ones for sure, if anything else.
Right. So at the heart of anxiety is, I don't know what's going to happen. True. And even below that, there's all this lie-based thinking, because the truth is we don't know what the future holds for us. And we are supposed to be walking in truth. And since we don't know the future, spending all this time thinking about future events, that's the devil's playground. That's where he loves to get us spun out of control, because then we think all these terrible things could happen. It's these fantasy scenarios that we create in our mind. So without going too far down into the fantasy scenario idea, we do want to say, okay, well, there's a list of things that we can talk about. So like social events, some people say, well, I have social anxiety. And okay, maybe that's the diagnosis, but there's a reason for that. And I think part of the problem with some of the diagnosis is it normalizes it too much. It goes too far. And then people say, well, that's just what I have. And it almost gives us an excuse not to address those things that the Lord wants to get at. So it could be like a work function. Someone might feel anxious about attending a company party where they have to socialize with colleagues and maybe even superiors. And it's not the normal function of work. Like they're used to being in their little hobbit hole or whatever, and they can avoid some of that stuff. But in some of those work functions, things can feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's a place to take a look at what's going on inside of me. There can be family gatherings that can be very sensitive. You might dread a family reunion due to strained relationships or unresolved conflicts with certain relatives. And you just, what can I do to avoid this or that person, right? And I don't want to even catch eye contact with that person, but some of that stuff is unavoidable. and we just can get very mousy about certain things because of the fear inside. And it's so much easier to say, well, he's a jerk, she's unfair, she judges me, those kind of things. But that's not living in freedom. I guess another social situation could be like a wedding or celebrations or even a funeral, right? So the prospect of interacting with a large number of people, and some they might know, they might not. Again, that goes back to that social anxiety. It's like, well, it's because of lie-based thoughts inside, because God has not given us a spirit of fear, right? So any thoughts on that, that first social anxiety kind of stuff?
No, I think that all like makes sense. And I know people like, for a while I had a small group that I would lead, and I had very specifically, people who, were very socially kind of reserved for various reasons. So I'm familiar with that. I've seen that. And I think I've seen like the legit anxiety that comes from that. Fly here. I've seen the very real anxiety that has come from that, and how like crippling it can be, and them dreading an event that, other people might not be so worried about, like dreading, oh, I've got a high school reunion coming up. Oh, I don't want to see anyone there, blah, blah, blah. I'm so nervous, that sort of thing. And, like, this isn't to downplay what they're going through or anything like that. But, for a lot of people, it's just like, no, it's a reunion, whatever. You go there, you talk to a few people, and you go home. But yeah, that can be like a really like crippling kind of level of dread and anxiety, for sure. I've definitely seen that.
Right. And I went to a class reunion many years ago, and it was the class that I grew up with. But my senior year, I went to a different school, but they invited me in. And so I remember being very intentional of checking my heart. And I think I had 1 or 2 sessions around that, and walking in, there still was some of that, that not all of this is resolved yet, but I'm going to attend to that later. But right now I have to face this. I've said that I'm coming. And so Jenny and I walked in and had just one of my best weekends in a long time.
Awesome.
Reconnecting with some people I hadn't seen for about 27 years. So that was awesome. So there's a lot of good that can come from that. So, and thankfully, I mean, I don't know how you explain this to a teenager who's in high school, but some of the anxiety that can be prevented is actually treat people well when you're young, and treat people well on your way up the corporate ladder, or treat people well wherever you go, because then you don't have to dread as much. There's a big benefit in living a Christ-centered life, and an obedient life, and a life of virtue and righteousness. There's so much that does not then kick you in the backside.
It's true.
Trying to avoid people. There was nobody that I walked into there where I thought, wow, I need to avoid that person because of how they're. Oh, no, that's not true. Okay, this is recording. There was only one person where this girl really wanted to go to a dance with me. And boy, as a 15-year-old, I did all I could to hide from her. So I think that was the only person. And it just didn't cross paths because there was like 150 people there. So yeah. So encountering those ex-partners or somebody you've dated, it can be a source of that anxiety, but especially if the breakup was particularly painful. But wouldn't it be so much better to then be able to confront things head on? So whether it's somebody you dated or old friends, it can be, it's that worry of, are they judging me? Well, you can't avoid people judging you, but you can stand up and own what you need to own and reconcile some relationships. So.
Well said.
Yeah. I've had people who come up to me, in a session, maybe they've come up to me too, but they say, well, you know what? I have to give a speech somewhere. I have to do some public speaking, maybe a work presentation. And people fear that because they take this pressure on. Of course, there's pressure to give a presentation. That's That's a truth-based situation when you're called upon to do those kind of things. But then it's just accelerated by what we really believe inside of us.
Mm.
Yeah, I've had memories where I've gone to giving speeches in class, and I didn't mind speaking that much in class, but there were some moments where, okay, like there was one where I was like rubbing the side of my nose, not even thinking about it. I was standing reading something. I was rubbing the side of my nose. I got done, and my quote unquote best friend just looks at me and starts rubbing my nose like, oh, you look like a dork when you were doing that. Oh, that was a memory I needed to deal with. So.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah. And this isn't public speaking, but it's another, like, even work related, like doing job interviews. There's actually a testimony on our website with Mike, and he said after having a session or two around his angst interviewing, he said, I think he felt pretty good about the interview. In fact, people said that was a fantastic interview and he got the job. So there was some immediate fruit from that session that he got the job he was pursuing, because he thinks in part was his resume, but part of it was his confidence and boldness and able to articulate what he needed to articulate in that interview. So I think that's pretty significant too. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So there's a lot of different things. There's even like medical appointments, right? Like,
yeah. Yep.
the anxiety about possibly receiving bad news. Sometimes we do receive bad news, right? Or even being honest with a doctor.
Yeah.
That's a doctor can't help you if you're not honest. So hopefully you've got, physicians in your life where you can share that, because I think some doctor visits become therapy sessions for people. So, yeah. So there's a lot there. So there's a lot of different coping strategies that people use in those situations, social, professional, that kind of thing. But we're not really much into coping strategies. Though I do think that when it comes to like giving a presentation, that one of the best things you can do aside from attending to your heart is actually to be prepared.
Yeah.
So when I give sermons, like once in a while, I think I can probably wing it, but I don't, I think there's some people in ministry, in pastoral ministry, that basically just say, I'm just going to trust the Holy Spirit and I'm going to open the Bible to whatever page and just going to preach because the Holy Spirit's going to give me the words. It's like, well, okay, if you want to live like that, that's your call. I wouldn't recommend it, because I personally think that the Holy Spirit doesn't have to wait until you're standing in front of 30, 40, 100, 1,000 people to actually give you something to say. You can actually, through some hard work and some discipline, he can meet you in the preparation.
Right. So, like waiting until the last minute of the last minute feels a lot more Hollywood than, like sometimes God preps you during the prep. Like,
right.
Exactly.
Right. And I think you can put yourself in situations. I go back to David and Goliath, where he said, the God who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the bear is going to deliver me here. So it was this building of character and building of trust and building of security in who the Lord is and what he wants to do. So there's a lot to be said for continuing to be open and vulnerable and expose yourself to those things that could potentially not feel great. But the more that we prepare, the more that we can make that significant difference and live the way that he wants us to live.
Yeah. Honestly. Yeah, actually, one of these I actually practiced right before my last one my latest session with Carol, where I was just between sessions. I knew we had one coming up, and things were feeling pretty good. I was pretty like, it's fine. Life is fine. Life is life, like that sort of thing, just kind of like coasting or whatever. And as it was coming up, I'm like, okay, but like, I want to like go in with something. So I started paying attention, and nothing was really like coming up to me. But I did go back through some memories, And I found one revolving around my old, whenever I visit like one of the old churches I used to go to. And specifically what I remember is, every time I'm coming away from that church, I'm feeling like a sense of frustration or anger or something. I don't know if that's going to lead anywhere, but maybe that's something I can bring up to Carol, that sort of thing. And I did bring it up to her, and I told her too beforehand. I was just like, Carol, I'll be honest, I don't know if this is going to lead anywhere, but like, and Carol's a professional though, so she's like, well, I'll determine that. Don't worry about that. You just go ahead. And so, just because I did a little bit of work between everything, I was able to start off or like find the starting point for that next session. And it ended up being a really like beautiful and like moving thing that, and again, I'm shocked every time. I shouldn't be shocked by now, Steve, but like every time there's like something springing up to the surface, there's this whole root structure leading to something so much deeper. And, we were able to look at that. I cried like a baby. It was great. And I came away like understanding a lot better, like, okay, that's why this is happening. And I've not been giving this to God, that sort of thing. So yeah, I highly, highly, highly encourage people, like, first of all, for the people who were asking, what should I be doing between sessions, or what can I do to prepare, that sort of thing? Like, good on you for thinking about the next one. Like God heals us in processes. I think, you get a lot of healing, and then sometimes you get a little bit more, and sometimes it's spaced out, but it's never everything all at once, because then we'd be perfect. And, none of us are. So I think, just to reiterate for those of you listening as we wrap up here, the big ones that you want to be doing between sessions, one, pay attention to what is hitting you a little bit more than anything else, like what's kind of striking a nerve in your daily life, and make a note of that, either write it down or like make a mental note and just be like, oh, I reacted really strongly to that. I reacted really strongly to when my neighbor said this thing to me, or when I saw this thing on wherever. Make a note of that. The next one would be just going through memories, even ones that you've already tread, and going back and examining those on your own. Like, am I good now? Or is there still something in this space, if you covered it last time, that I need to go back and finish cleaning up a little bit here, or like rather pointing out to Jesus so that he can help, that he can clean it up. Re-looking at those memories, or just memories in general, like what I did with my last one. And then, thinking about things that are coming up, class reunions. I don't want to deal with this social event. Why am I so anxious about it? Why am I so anxious about this medical event? I turned on the TV for 3 seconds, and now I think, according to CNN, that the world is ending. I'm really anxious about that, like that sort of thing. Make note of all of these. If they're standing out to you, they're standing out to you for a reason. And I think that knowing that and going in with that knowledge helps us helps the facilitators rather, to be able to look at your situation and help guide you through that. And by God's grace, by his discernment, you can find what the core of that is, and you can get that pulled up and get it out of you. And that you don't need that negativity, those negative emotions running your life anymore. So this has been the CrossCounsel podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, share with your friends, and look for us on social media. The world will become a much better place, and Jesus will be seen in a much better light the more we are transformed by his truth and love. We'll see you next time, everybody.